I want you to imagine a sound for a second. Imagine feeling a deep, atmospheric, low-frequency elephant rumble resonating right in your chest, just vibrating through you.
Oh, yeah. That is a sound you do not forget if you ever feel it. It is incredibly powerful.
It really is. It broadcasts all the way across the savannah. But I want you to imagine a specific scenario here. What if that sound, that specific rumble, isn't just a generic warning to the herd?
Right, like just an alarm.
Exactly. What if it isn't just casual elephant small talk about the weather, but it is actually someone's specific individual name?
It completely reframes how you look at the entire animal kingdom, really, when you consider that possibility.
It totally does. Because, I mean, think about that universal human experience you've definitely had. You know, you are at a crowded, incredibly noisy party. People are just talking over each other. Music is blasting. Dishes are clinking.
Oh, I know exactly where you're going with this.
Yeah.
It is chaos.
Right. It is pure chaos. But then someone all the way across the room casually says your name, and you instantly snap your head around. It's like you have this hyper-tuned built-in radar just for that one specific sequence of sounds.
Yeah, and the cocktail party effect. And for the longest time, the scientific consensus was basically that humans were the only creatures on Earth doing that with actual names.
Which brings us to the core mission of today's deep dive into the secret language of animals. We are asking the big question for you today. Are humans really the only animals that use names, combine meanings, and organize communication into language-like structures?
And to get you an answer, we are looking at a stack of incredibly recent, honestly paradigm-shifting research today.
I am so excited about these.
Me too. We are pulling from 5 major breakthroughs published just recently, and they span 3 completely distinct branches of the animal family tree. So we're talking elephants on the savannah, primates in the dense jungle, and whales out in the open ocean.
Which is quite the road trip. And if we are going to figure out how animals might build something resembling language, I feel like it makes sense to start with the most personal, fundamental building block of all, which is identifying individuals.
Right. If you can't say who you were talking to, you can't really have a complex conversation.
Exactly. So let's head straight out to the savannah. We have a 2024 paper published in Nature, Ecology, and Evolution, and it is titled African Elephants Address One Another with Individually Specific Name-like Calls.
This study is just a massive landmark in animal behavior. I mean, what the researchers did was record contact and caregiving rumbles in wild African elephants.
And these are the really low rumbles, right?
Yeah, the infrasound. And instead of just relying on human ears, which are notoriously bad at picking up the nuances of those deep frequencies that can travel for miles, they fed these recordings into machine learning algorithms.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because machine learning algorithms are great at finding patterns, obviously, but they can also find patterns in pure static if you let them. So how did they use the algorithm to actually prove the elephants were using names?
That is a great question. So the researchers tasked the algorithm with looking solely at the acoustic structure of these rumbles, just the pitch, the frequency, the physical shape of the sound wave.
So no context at all.
None. They stripped away all the visual and social context. The algorithm had absolutely no idea which elephant was standing next to which. And yet, based purely on the acoustic features of the caller's rumble, the algorithm could predict exactly which specific elephant was being addressed.
Wow, so the rumble contained specific encoded information pointing right to the receiver.
Yes, exactly.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second. We've known for a while that, dolphins and some parrots can call out to specific friends, but don't they just do that by mimicking the friend's voice? Like, if I wanted to get your attention across that crowded party, I would just imitate the way you usually introduce yourself.
You've hit on the exact distinction that makes this paper so groundbreaking. Dolphins and parrots do use local copying. They mimic the signature whistle of the individual they want to reach.
Right.
But the machine learning analysis in this elephant study showed they are absolutely not doing that. The elephants are using arbitrary vocal labels.
Wait, arbitrary meaning they just invented a sound to represent that individual?
Oh, yes. They are using an abstract sound that has no physical or acoustic relationship to the receiver's own voice.
That is wild.
It really is. It requires a level of abstract cognitive processing, basically associating a random sound with a specific physical entity that we previously thought was a strictly human capability.
I have to push back a little more, though, because how do scientists actually know these are names and not just a reflection of the caller's mood at that moment? Like, maybe a mother elephant just has a specific stressed out rumble when she's looking for her calf, and the calf recognizes the stress, not a name.
Well, the researchers anticipated that exact skepticism. which is why they didn't just publish the algorithmic findings and call it a day. They took these insights back out into the wild and conducted some really rigorous playback experiments to see how the elephants themselves interpreted the sounds.
Oh, I love playback experiments. Let me guess how this works. A playback experiment usually involves hiding a giant speaker in the brush, waiting for an elephant to wander by, and then blasting a sound to see if they react, right?
In essence, yes, though with a lot more scientific control. They set up two conditions for a wild elephant. In the experimental condition, they played a recorded rumble that was originally addressed directly to that specific elephant.
Okay, got it.
And then in the control condition, they played a rumble from the exact same caller, but one that was originally addressed to a totally different elephant in the herd.
Oh, that is clever. So it's the same caller, the same emotional context, the same environment. The only difference is the invisible label of who the sound was meant for.
Exactly.
So what did the elephants do?
The reaction was just night and day. When elephants heard the recording of the call originally addressed to them, they approached the hidden speaker significantly faster, and they enthusiastically called back more often.
No way.
Yeah. And when they heard the call addressed to someone else, they largely ignored it. They recognized their own distinct vocal labels out of all that acoustic clutter.
That is just brilliant. They are picking their own names out of the crowd. But this makes me think about the environment a little bit. Because elephants use these deep rumbles because they are spread out over miles of open savanna.
Right. Sight isn't always reliable over those distances.
Exactly. But what about animals that are right next to each other but still can't see each other because the environment is physically in the way? Does the same evolutionary pressure apply in, say, a jungle?
It absolutely does. And that takes us from the savanna to the dense foliated rainforests and to a completely different evolutionary lineage, actually. We are looking at a 2024 science paper called Vocal Labeling of Others by Non-Human Primates.
Specifically, we are talking about common marmosets here. I know they are these incredibly social, tiny monkeys that live in tight-knit family groups.
They are. And because they live in the thick canopy of the rainforest, visual communication is often completely useless. You could be 3 feet away from your sibling and have no idea they are there because a giant leaf is in the way.
Which sounds terrifying, honestly.
It probably is. So they rely heavily on what biologists call fee calls. These are very high-pitched, loud contact calls.
And what this science paper found is that marmosets use these fee calls to do the exact same thing the elephants are doing. They vocally label their conspecifics, meaning the other specific monkeys in their family group.
Exactly.
And the researchers did their own playback experiments, and sure enough, the marmosets responded more consistently and correctly to the calls specifically directed at them versus calls meant for another monkey.
It points to a fascinating case of convergent evolution. You have two totally different species living in totally different environments, evolving the same cognitive tool, because the problem they need to solve, basically, how do I let you know I'm talking to you when I can't see you, is the same.
There is a detail in this marmoset study that I found so relatable, actually. It's about how these families communicate. The researchers found that family members use similar acoustic features to label others. And it wasn't just genetic.
Right, it was learned.
Yeah. Adult marmosets who were paired up later in life actually learned to use these shared labels with their new partners.
It is social vocal learning in action.
Right. It's exactly like your human family developing a specific weird shared nickname for an uncle.
Oh, definitely.
And suddenly everyone in the house starts using it, even the people who just married into the family and barely know the guy. You learn the vocabulary of your social group to fit in.
That analogy hits the nail on the head. They aren't born with a hardwired dictionary in their brains. They actively learn these labels from their family members to maintain group cohesion.
Which is so human-like.
It is, but I do want to make sure we don't get ahead of the science here. We need to be careful not to equate this entirely with human names.
Okay, fair. How so?
Well, in our language, a name is a distinct, isolated word. In elephants and marmosets, these labels are heavily embedded within the acoustic structure of a longer call that also broadcasts the caller's age, sex, and mood all at once. It's a blended signal.
That's a very fair distinction. It's a vocal label, but maybe not a first name, middle initial, last name kind of situation.
Right, exactly.
But establishing that animals can point to a specific individual leads us to a huge evolutionary leap. Because having a label is one thing, but can they take different labels or different calls and stick them together to build a completely new idea?
Now we are crossing the bridge from just having a vocabulary of sounds to actually building grammar and meaning.
In human language, this concept is called compositionality. For you listening, the easiest way to think about compositionality is combining smaller, meaningful parts into a larger, more complex meaning.
It is the bedrock of how we speak.
Take the words rain and coat. Alone, they mean two very distinct things. You have weather falling from the sky, and you have a piece of clothing, but you stick them together to make raincoat, and you've created a much more specific, combined concept that alters the original meanings.
And for decades, biologists and linguists considered this specific ability, what we call non-trivial compositionality, to be the massive impenetrable wall that separated human language from basic animal communication.
Okay, let's define non-trivial for a second, because animals combine things all the time.
They do, but it's usually trivial compositionality. That just means adding two things together in a sequence. Imagine a monkey makes a food call and then immediately makes an alarm call.
Okay.
The meaning to the rest of the troop is just there's food here and also there's a predator nearby. The meanings just sit next to each other.
They don't interact.
Exactly. Non-trivial compositionality, like your raincoat example, is when the combination actually expands or modifies the meaning of the individual parts. The whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts.
Enter the bonobos.
Enter the bonobos. We have a 2025 science paper titled Extensive Compositionality in the Vocal System of Bonobos.
And what did they do here?
The researchers went out and analyzed the calls of wild bonobos, essentially mapping out their entire semantic space, meaning they tracked which sounds were used in which specific behavioral contexts, like foraging, traveling, or grooming.
And what did they find in that semantic space?
They found that every single call type in the bonobo repertoire occurs in at least one compositional combination.
Every single one.
Yes. It isn't just a rare trick they pull out during emergencies.
Yeah.
And crucially, they isolated 3 specific combinations that exhibit clear, non-trivial compositionality.
Give me an example.
For example, bonobos will combine a peep sound and a whistle, or a high hoot and a low hoot. The meaning of that full combined sequence is connected to the individual parts, but it conveys a broader, modified meaning that a single call just cannot communicate on its own.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the bonobos aren't the only apes doing this. We have another paper to look at, this one from Science Advances in 2025, titled Versatile Use of Chimpanzee Call Combinations Promotes Expansion of Meaning.
The sheer scope of this study is staggering, honestly. The research team managed to record and analyze more than 4,000 wild chimpanzee utterances.
4,000.
Yes.
And they found that chimps use these flexible two-call combinations. Linguists call these bigrams, and I like to think of this like having a very small box of verbal Legos.
That is a great way to put it.
Right. You only have a few blocks to play with, maybe a pant hoot, a grunt, a roar. But if you can stick them together in flexible two-call bigrams, you can build entirely different structures to describe different daily situations.
Exactly. If you only have 10 distinct, hardwired calls, your ability to communicate about the world is severely limited. But if you have the cognitive architecture to combine them sequentially, to modify their meanings, you exponentially expand your communicative power.
It is a game changer for them.
It really is. And the real breakthrough of this chink study is the versatility of those combinations.
Versatility is the key word there. Why is that such a big deal for scientists?
Because historically, when we saw glimmers of call combinations in other animals, it was almost exclusively restricted to one highly specific context, which was predator alarms.
Oh, like watching out for eagles.
Exactly. A monkey might combine a couple of sounds to distinguish between a leopard on the ground and an eagle in the sky. It was considered a hardwired survival reflex. But this chimpanzee study proved that these bigrams are used across their entire daily lives.
Not just for emergencies.
Right. They use them during resting, while traveling as a group, during feeding, and during complex social interactions.
It's not just an emergency siren. It's the actual versatile fabric of their daily social lives.
It suggests an evolutionary stepping stone. It sits somewhere between the rudimentary single-call alarm systems of other primates and the completely open-ended, infinite grammatical system of human language.
So apes show us how meaning can be built locally with small blocks, combining them to expand their immediate world. But what about organizing huge, sprawling, complex sequences of information? To find that kind of architecture, we have to leave the jungle, leave the savannah, and go entirely underwater.
We are heading out to the open ocean to study the songs of the humpback whales.
We're looking at a 2025 science paper called Whale Song Shows Language Like Statistical Structure. Now, you and I and everyone listening have known for decades that whales sing,
Sure.
but this study dives deep into the underlying architecture of that music.
Humpback whale song is arguably the most complex acoustic display in the animal kingdom. Only the males sing. And it isn't just a random assortment of noises. It is a long, continually evolving cultural performance.
A cultural performance. That implies it's learned and shared, not just instinctual.
That's the beauty of it. A whale song is made of individual sound elements, which are organized into distinct phrases. Those phrases are repeated to make themes, and those themes make up the complete song.
It sounds like a symphony.
It really does. Within a given population of whales, all the males will conform to the current popular arrangement of the song. But over the years, the song progressively changes. It shifts and evolves. It is culturally transmitted from generation to generation, much in the same way human language and slang evolve.
Since it's passed down socially and has to be memorized, the researchers wanted to know if it shared any structural similarities with how humans pass down language. And the way they tested this is fascinating.
It is brilliant.
They didn't just listen to the whales. They applied analytical algorithms normally designed to study how human infants learn to segment speech.
The cognitive challenge for a human baby is actually profound. When an infant hears a continuous stream of adults talking, they don't know where one word ends and another begins.
It's just a wall of noise.
Exactly. But their brains intuitively track statistical probabilities.
Give us an example of how a baby tracks a statistical probability, because that sounds super complex.
It does, but it happens naturally. Take the phrase pretty baby. A baby's brain unconsciously calculates that the syllable pre is almost always followed by cordy. The transitional probability is very high.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the syllable itty is very rarely followed by the syllable ball. There is a dip in the statistical probability. When the baby's brain registers that dip, it says, ah, that's a boundary. Pretty is one unit and baby is another.
They are essentially doing complex math to find the spaces between words.
Without even knowing it.
So the researchers applied this exact infant learning algorithm to 8 years of humpback whale recordings to see if the songs had those same mathematical boundaries.
And they found them. They discovered that whale songs contain recurring units that have the exact same statistical patterns found in human language.
That is mind-blowing.
But more than that, they discovered the songs follow two universal linguistic laws. The first is Zipf's law.
Zipf's law. This is the power law distribution of frequency. Basically, it means a tiny handful of words are used constantly, and a massive amount of words are used very rarely.
Right.
Like how in English, you use the word the 1,000 times a day, but you might use the word xylophone once a decade.
The whale song subunits follow this exact same mathematical distribution. And second, they found Zipf's law of brevity.
Which means the most frequent units are also the physically shortest ones. Again, like the word the or it versus a long, rare word like encyclopedia. But why do whales obey a human linguistic law?
Well, because it's not exclusively a human law, it's a law of cognitive efficiency.
Oh, interesting.
Think about it from the whale's perspective. They have to memorize, learn, and culturally transmit these massive sequences across multiple generations. Using short sounds for the most common elements saves breath, saves energy, and makes the whole sequence easier to compress in the brain.
That makes total sense.
The fact that we see these two specific statistical structures in both human language and whale song suggests these patterns emerge whenever a complex behavior needs to be efficiently memorized and shared.
So, because it has the exact same statistical structure, the same word boundaries, and the same frequency laws as human language, are you telling me I could be listening to a highly organized whale podcast, a political debate about ocean currents, or a glowing restaurant review of a krill swarm?
As wonderful as a whale restaurant review sounds, we have to rein it in and firmly distinguish structure from meaning here.
You're ruining my dreams.
I know. But having a language-like statistical structure does not prove that whales are using human-like grammar, or that these sequences contain distinct semantic meanings the way our sentences do.
Ah, so it's the architecture of language, but not necessarily a dictionary.
Right. Consider human music.
Mm.
A symphony is culturally transmitted, it has strict structural rules, and it even follows Zipf's law. But individual musical notes don't have explicit semantic meanings like nouns and verbs do.
That is a great comparison.
The statistical structure in whale song exists because it makes the song learnable. It's about communicative efficiency, not necessarily about telling a literal story about a giant squid.
So, what does this all mean for us? We started this deep dive asking a very specific question. Are humans really the only animals that use names, combine meanings, and organize communication into language-like structures?
The most honest scientific answer is that we are not nearly as unique as we told ourselves we were.
Yep.
Now, to be clear, none of the 5 studies we explored today prove that animals possess a full translated human language. We didn't find animals speaking in complete grammatical human sentences.
But I would argue that what we did find is actually much more profound. We found that the pieces of language, the fundamental cognitive building blocks that make our conversations possible, are scattered across entirely different branches of the animal tree.
Absolutely.
We see the capacity for individual vocal labels in elephants and marmosets. We see the flexible, non-trivial combination of meanings in bonobos and chimps. And we see socially learned, statistically structured sequences in humpback whales.
It radically shifts your perspective on human evolution. We have this tendency to think that human language just magically appeared out of nowhere, like a switch was flipped in our primate brains 100,000 years ago.
Like we just woke up one day and started talking.
Right. But evolution doesn't work like a magic wand. It acts as a recycler. It is the ultimate tinker. It assembled our profound, open-ended language abilities from cognitive tools that were already lying around the biological workshop, tools that are still being used by the living world today.
And think about why we are only just figuring this out now. For decades, these animals have been labeling each other, combining meanings, and structuring their songs. We are only just now discovering these complex layers of animal communication because we finally built the right tools.
That is the key right there.
We finally have advanced machine learning algorithms that can map semantic spaces without human bias. And we finally have the acoustic technology to conduct massive playback experiments. We finally learned how to tune our radar to their frequency.
Which leaves you with a fascinating, slightly wild thought to mull over. We are using artificial intelligence and machine learning to decode the structure of what elephants, apes, and whales are saying to each other.
Right.
But if AI can now help us isolate these vocal labels and combinations, how long until we use that exact same AI to start generating our own feed calls and rumbles?
Right.
How long until we try to talk back?
And more importantly, if we do figure out how to talk back, what do you even say to an elephant?
I guess we will have to find out.
This deep dive is based on peer-reviewed studies published in Nature Ecology and Evolution, Science, and Science Advances.